Horror on the Road, Story 1. Empty lanes, shifting lights. I used to enjoy driving at night. There's something calming about the absence of noise, the emptiness of the road, the rhythm of the yellow line slipping past. But that was before. Now, even the thought of headlights in my rearview mirror makes my chest tighten. This started 3 weeks ago during a late shift at the diner when I took the coastal highway back home. The kind of road that feels like it was carved from silence itself. It was just past 2 a.m. and the highway was empty, no taillights, no oncoming glare, just the faint sound of the ocean to my left and the distant, rhythmic beat of windshield wipers. I had the heater low, the radio off. The only illumination came from my headlights and the pale shimmer of the moon above the cliffs. I was barely 10 minutes into the drive when I noticed the car behind me. It didn't pull up close. It stayed back, hovering just far enough that I could only see its headlights, no make or model. At first, I thought I hadn't noticed it merging onto the highway behind me. But something about the way it moved, it didn't stay centered in the lane. It weaved subtly, as if the driver was distracted or watching me. I tapped my brakes. Once, no reaction. Then again, still nothing. I changed lanes. So did it. I slowed. It slowed. For a few miles, we continued like that, me trying to convince myself it was just coincidence. A drunk driver, maybe, or someone tired like me. But my stomach had that cold, hollow feeling. You know, the one like your body knows something you don't? Just before mile marker 47, there's a narrow pull-off by the bluff where tourists stop during the day to take photos. I signaled and eased onto it. My tires crunched over gravel. I expected the car to continue past me, but it didn't. It didn't pull over. It didn't speed off. It just disappeared. I looked in every mirror. Empty road. No headlights. No engine noise. Nothing but wind. I sat there for a minute, hand frozen on the gear shift. The engine hummed quietly under me, the dashboard lights casting a soft glow across my hands. I rolled down the window and listened. Far below, the surf hit the rocks, and then I heard another engine. Low, idle, close, but there was no car behind me. I turned off my headlights. Still nothing, just blackness behind me and the soft hum of an unseen engine somewhere nearby. I got out slowly. My boots crunched on the gravel as I circled the car. No one there, no vehicle. Just my own breath misting in the cold air and that persistent, vibrating hum too close to be imagined. I stepped toward the road again, peering down the highway. A faint flicker of light flashed far ahead, like taillights vanishing around a bend. But that made no sense. There hadn't been anyone ahead of me for miles. When I looked back toward my own car, the driver's door was open. I was sure I had closed it. I always do. I got back in quickly and locked the doors. I told myself it had been the wind, that maybe I'd left it ajar without realizing. I started the engine again and turned the heater to full. As I merged back onto the road, the radio came on by itself, just static at first. Then a faint voice whispered something I couldn't make out, followed by a soft clicking like someone tapping the microphone with a nail. I turned the volume down, then off. But the tapping didn't stop. It was coming from behind me, from inside the car. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just kept driving faster now, the curves of the coastal road feeling tighter than usual. The tapping eventually stopped, but I still didn't look back. When I finally reached my apartment, I sat in the parking lot with the engine running for nearly 10 minutes. I didn't hear anything else. Nothing followed me home. But when I stepped out, I noticed a streak of condensation on the rear windshield, 2 long, narrow smudges. Like someone had dragged their fingers down the glass from the inside. I haven't driven that stretch since. I've been taking the longer inland route, even if it adds 40 minutes. I tell myself it was just exhaustion, a trick of the night. But last night, when I got home, my headlights illuminated the back of my garage for just a second. There was a shadow there. Not mine, and it moved. If anyone else has experienced something like this on an empty road, please let me know. Am I going crazy? Story 2, lane change with no headlights. It started just after dusk, when the rain turned from a steady drizzle to a full-on downpour. I was halfway through a 4-hour drive on Route 66, trying to make it to my sister's place before midnight. My wipers were working overtime, and the rhythmic thudding was the only sound above the hum of my tires on wet asphalt. That's when I first saw the headlights behind me, bright, too steady, and oddly low to the ground. I didn't think much of it at first. Highway driving at night attracts plenty of weirdos, and I figured it was someone in a lowered sedan or maybe a truck with bad suspension. But as I glanced at my rear camera, something didn't sit right. The reflection of the lights bounced wildly, but the water splash patterns, those fine arcs of mist and spray my car always kicks up, didn't match what a second set of tires should have been producing. I toggled the mirror view to double check. The lights shifted lanes behind me, swerving with slow, deliberate movements. Still, no secondary splash trails. It was like the vehicle was gliding, not rolling. I reminded myself that vision can get weird in heavy rain, especially with headlight glare and fatigue setting in. So I turned up the radio and tried to focus. On the road. About 30 minutes later, I took an exit to refuel and stretch my legs. The station was one of those lonely outposts with a flickering sign and a single pump under a rustic canopy. I parked under the light and stepped out into the smell of wet concrete and gasoline. I looked back down the road. Nothing followed me off the highway. No headlights, no engine sounds, just the hiss of rain against metal and the steady ping of droplets on my jacket. Still, I had this crawling sensation in my spine, like something had been too close for too long. I shook it off, went inside for coffee, and the guy behind the counter didn't say much. Just stared at me with a kind of unfocused interest until I mumbled thanks and left. When I got back in the car, the rear camera had frozen, static. I rebooted the system, but the display stayed black and twitchy. I pulled back onto the highway, adrenaline overriding my earlier calm. My hands were cold against the wheel, and the headlights behind me returned within minutes. Same position, same distance, same unnerving steadiness. I leaned forward to squint through the mirror. I could swear there was no outline of a car, just two lights suspended in rain, bobbing like fishing lures. It got worse when I hit the construction zone. Orange cones lined the left lane, forcing all traffic into a narrow corridor. I slowed to 35, wary of hydroplaning. The lights behind me didn't slow. They kept pace, unblinking. When I passed under a flashing warning sign, I caught a glimpse of the road behind me in the reflection. Off a metal barrier. The water shimmered, but there were no tire tracks behind either of us. Not even mine. That moment stretched. I stared so long, I nearly veered off the road. When I corrected, the lights behind me surged closer. I felt the car shudder, but there was no impact. Just that creeping certainty that something was inches behind me, silent and persistent. I tried to convince myself it was a shadow illusion, a refraction in the rain, or maybe my own lights reflecting off wet road signs. Then came the tunnel. A short stretch, maybe 400 feet, but inside it was pitch black. Either the storm had knocked out the interior lights or the place hadn't been maintained in years. As I entered, my dashboard flickered. The radio cut out. For those few seconds, I was swallowed in total silence except for the splash of my tires and a new sound. A scraping. Long, deliberate metal against concrete. I accelerated through the tunnel. When I emerged, the lights behind me were gone. I glanced back frantically, expecting to see them reappear, but the road was empty. It stayed that way for the next 20 minutes. I thought maybe I'd finally lost whatever it was or hallucinated the entire thing. At my sister's driveway, I parked under the porch light and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. My legs trembled as I stepped out. The rain had eased into a light mist. I walked around to check the back of my car, not sure what I expected to find. There were no dents, no scratches, just a faint trail of something along the bumper. Smudges, like drag marks from metal claws, wet but not from the rain. And below the trunk, etched faintly into the mud, 2 parallel lines about 6 inches apart, leading nowhere. I haven't told anyone in my family about that night. I keep telling myself it was the weather, fatigue, optical illusions. But I don't take Route 66 anymore, not even in clear skies. And I covered my rear camera with tape. If anyone has seen something like this on that stretch of road, please say something. I'm not sure I was alone out there. Story 3. Tracks in the rain. It started just after dusk, when the rain turned from a steady drizzle to a full-on downpour. I was halfway through a 4-hour drive on Route 66, trying to make it to my sister's place before midnight. My wipers were working overtime, and the rhythmic thudding was the only sound above. The hum of my tires on wet asphalt. That's when I first saw the headlights behind me, bright, too steady, and oddly low to the ground. I didn't think much of it at first. Highway driving at night attracts plenty of weirdos, and I figured it was someone in a lowered sedan or maybe a truck with bad suspension. But as I glanced at my rear camera, something didn't sit right. The reflection of the lights bounced wildly, but the water splash patterns, those fine arcs of mist and spray my car always kicks up, didn't match what a second set of tires should have been producing. I toggled the mirror, view to double check. The lights shifted lanes behind me, swerving with slow, deliberate movements. Still, no secondary splash trails. It was like the vehicle was gliding, not rolling. I reminded myself that vision can get weird in heavy rain, especially with headlight glare and fatigue setting in. So I turned up the radio and tried to focus on the road. About 30 minutes later, I took an exit to refuel and stretch my legs. The station was one of those lonely outposts with a flickering sign and a single pump under a rusted canopy. I parked under the light and stepped out into the smell of wet concrete and gasoline. I looked back down the road. Nothing followed me off the highway. No headlights, no engine sounds, just the hiss of rain against metal and the steady ping of droplets on my jacket. Still, I had this crawling sensation in my spine, like something had been too close for too long. I shook it off, went inside for coffee, and the guy behind the counter didn't say much. Just stared at me with a kind of unfocused interest until I mumbled thanks and left. When I got back in the car, the rear camera had frozen, static. I rebooted the system, but the display stayed black and twitchy. I pulled back onto the highway, adrenaline overriding my earlier calm. My hands were cold against the wheel, and the headlights behind me returned within minutes. Same position, same distance, same unnerving steadiness. I leaned forward to squint through the mirror. I could swear there was no outline of a car, just 2 lights suspended in rain, bobbing like fishing lures. It got worse when I hit the construction zone. Orange cones lined the left lane, forcing all traffic into a narrow corridor. I slowed to 35, wary of hydroplaning. The lights behind me didn't slow. They kept pace, unblinking. When I passed under a flashing warning sign, I caught a glimpse of the road behind me in the reflection. Off a metal barrier. The water shimmered, but there were no tire tracks behind either of us, not even mine. That moment stretched. I stared so long, I nearly veered off the road. When I corrected, the lights behind me surged closer. I felt the car shudder, but there was no impact. Just that creeping certainty that something was inches behind me, silent and persistent. I tried to convince myself it was a shadow illusion, a refraction in the rain, or maybe my own lights reflecting off wet road signs. Then came the tunnel. A short stretch, maybe 400 feet, but inside it was pitch black. Either the storm had knocked out the interior lights or the place hadn't been maintained in years. As I entered, my dashboard flickered. The radio cut out. For those few seconds, I was swallowed in total silence, except for the splash of my tires and a new sound, a scraping. Long, deliberate, metal against concrete. I accelerated through the tunnel. When I emerged, the lights behind me were gone. I glanced back frantically, expecting to see them reappear, but the road was empty. It stayed that way for the next 20 minutes. I thought maybe I'd finally lost whatever it was or hallucinated the entire thing. At my sister's driveway, I parked under the porch light and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. My legs trembled as I stepped out. The rain had eased into a light mist. I walked around to check the back of my car, not sure what I expected to find. There were no dents, no scratches, just a faint trail of something along the bumper. Smudges like drag marks from metal claws wet, but not from the rain. And below the trunk, etched faintly into the mud, 2 parallel lines, about 6 inches apart, leading nowhere. I haven't told anyone in my family about that night. I keep telling myself it was the weather, fatigue, optical illusions. But I don't take Route 66 anymore, not even in clear skies. And I covered my rear camera with tape. If anyone has seen something like this on that stretch of road, please say something. I'm not sure I was alone out there. Story 4. No. Car in the mirror. I hadn't meant to leave work that late. I told myself I'd finish that one last email, and somehow the office emptied out around me. By the time I got to the parking lot, only my car and a flickering streetlight remained. The kind of flicker that makes you wonder if your eyes are playing tricks or if the world is. I slid into the driver's seat and tried to shake off the unease. It was just late, just quiet. The highway felt emptier than usual, too. No trucks, no music from passing cars, just the low hum of my engine and the occasional rustle of wind. It was the kind of drive that makes you hyper-aware of every bump in the road, every creak in your own vehicle. I hadn't driven this stretch in the dark before, but GPS insisted it was the fastest way. Shortcuts always feel longer when they're unfamiliar. It started about 10 minutes in. I noticed headlights behind me, far back at first, then closer. They wobbled slightly, weaving across lanes like the driver was distracted. I glanced up to get a better look, but the mirror showed nothing. No lights, just the faint glow of my own dashboard and the outline of the rear window. I blinked. Still nothing. I checked the side mirrors. Nothing there either. Just the black of the road stretching behind me, interrupted by the occasional white line sliding past. But when I looked forward again, there it was, a flash of light too close this time, too sudden. My rear sensors beeped once, sharp and urgent. I tapped the brakes. Not hard, just enough to see if the car would back off. No change, the sensors. Stayed quiet again, and the road behind me looked empty. I shook my head and laughed under my breath, trying to sound amused. Tired, I muttered. Just tired. A few minutes passed. I tried turning on the radio, but every station was static. I thought about switching to Bluetooth, but my hands felt too tense. I didn't want to let go of the wheel, even for a second. The silence pressed in again. Then the sensor beeped twice this time. I jerked in my seat, eyes shooting to the mirror. Still nothing. This time I leaned back and turned around fully, looking through the rear window. Empty highway. The same stretch of cracked asphalt and pine trees blurred by speed. I could see my own taillights reflecting faintly off the road. But no headlights. No car. Nothing. I started to wonder if my sensors were malfunctioning. Maybe a short circuit, a false signal. But why only on this road? Why only now? I tried to dismiss it, just some glitch. But every few minutes, the beeping returned, always when I wasn't expecting it, always when I wasn't looking directly behind. And once, when I looked again, I thought I saw something just barely in the reflection. Not a car, not quite. A shimmer, like heat rising off pavement, except it was cold. I turned off the AC because the air had gotten strangely frigid. I remember rubbing my fingers together and noticing how stiff they felt. I passed a rest. Thought about pulling in, but it looked deserted, and the lights in the bathroom building were flickering. I didn't stop. Then came the worst part. I hit a stretch of road with no lights at all, just the beam of my own headlights cutting. Through dense, low fog, my speed dropped without me realizing. That's when the rear sensors went crazy, 4 beeps in rapid succession. Something was right behind me. I froze, didn't look back, didn't want to. Instead, I glanced at the mirror, only for a second. Still, nothing, but I heard it. A soft, rhythmic thumping, as if something was brushing lightly against the back of the car. Not hitting it, more like following it, matching its movements, and the air inside the car. It changed, not just cold now. Heavy, pressed in against my chest and shoulders like I was underwater. I don't remember making the turn off the highway. I only remember the sudden brightness of a gas station and my car jolting as I slammed on the brakes in the lot. I sat there for a long time with the engine idling, staring into the mirror. When I finally looked back, the sensors were quiet, but the back windshield was fogged up from the outside. Just one spot, like something had leaned close. I wiped it, but a faint outline remained. 5 smudges, like fingertips. I haven't taken that road again, but sometimes when I'm parked at home late at night, I swear I hear the rear sensors beep once, just once, like something is waiting for me to go driving again. If anyone else has had something like this happen, something you couldn't see, but felt, please say something. I need to know it's not just me. Story 5, right. Behind you. I've made the drive through the Mojave more times than I can count, usually during the day, but that night I had pushed it left too late, missed the last motel exit, figured I'd power through the 4-hour stretch of Route 66 and reach Barstow before midnight. Just me, a thermos of burnt gas station coffee, and a black ribbon of highway unraveling under the wheels. There's a stillness out there at night that's hard to describe. No trees, no wind, just the vast hush of sand and rock and stars that don't blink. I passed mile marker 107 at exactly 11:42 p.m. That's when I noticed the movement in my rearview mirror. Just a flicker at first. I tapped the brakes lightly, instinct more than anything. Nothing behind me. The road curved gently left and dipped. I figured it must have been the tail end of a mirage, or my eyes adjusting. But when I glanced at the dash screen, the rear camera view was lit up. A single car, headlights on, very close. My first thought was relief. Another traveler. Maybe even someone else who'd missed the motel turnoff. I gave a short wave in the mirror, just a dumb habit I picked up from rural routes. No reaction, no flicker of headlights. Just steady beams behind me, locked in, but something was off. I leaned forward, squinting into the side mirror, trying to get a clearer angle, and that's when I noticed it, the light. It wasn't white, it was red. 2 taillights, not headlights, but facing me, the exact shape and pattern of my own. And not reflected, they were where headlights should be, moving with me, turning when I turned. A perfect mirror, except from the wrong direction. I let off the gas and blinked hard, pulled slightly to the right shoulder to let them pass. They didn't. They adjusted perfectly, still behind me, still wrong. I turned off the dash cam, turned it back on. The screen flickered, then stabilized. Same image, same car, my car. I even saw the little bumper sticker I'd half peeled months ago. I looked into the mirror again and caught something that didn't belong. A figure just barely in the driver's seat. But the face was wrong, too still, not following the road. I rolled down my window, trying to shake the claustrophobia that was curling in my chest. The desert air was sharp and dry, smelling faintly of ozone and dust. No sound but the low hum of my tires, and something else, a rhythmic tapping, faint, behind me. I couldn't tell if it was in the car or outside. I turned up the radio, static, switched stations, more static. Then briefly 1 second of my own voice, saying something I didn't remember saying. I shut it off. My hands were sweating. I pulled out my phone and tried the camera. Took a quick video of the mirror, but when I played it back, the road was empty. No lights behind me. Just my voice again, faint in the background, whispering something indecipherable. At 11:59, I passed mile marker 107 again. I'm sure of it. Same vent post, same chipped paint. I checked my GPS, no loop. Straight path to Barstow, but the screen was frozen. I touched it. It flickered and reset, then loaded a map of somewhere else. No roads, just gray grid and a blinking red dot. I pulled over completely this time, killed the engine, got out and stood beside the car. Absolute silence. The desert swallowed all sound. I looked back down the road. Nothing. No headlights. No red lights. No car. Just me. My breath. And the soft thud of a door closing. Not mine. I turned fast. My car was still open, but in the mirror there it was again. The second car. Right behind me. No dust trail. No sound. Just there. And now it was off. Lights gone. Shape still. I walked toward it. 5 steps. Then 10. Each step slower. At 15 feet, I stopped. It was identical. Not just model and color, everything. The same dent in the left panel. Same air freshener swinging. From the mirror, then it blinked, not the lights. The reflection. Just once like a glitch. And the figure inside it turned its head. I ran, back into my car. Peeled off so fast the tires squealed on sand. I didn't check the mirror. I couldn't. I drove for what felt like hours. Never passed another car. Never saw another light. At 1:04 a.m., I reached a gas station just outside Barstow. The clerk looked up as I stumbled in and asked if everything was all right. I asked her if anyone had come in behind me. She looked out the window, shook her head. You're the only car I've seen since 10. She handed me a receipt. I looked. Down. Timestamp. 11:43 p.m. Same minute I passed mile marker. 107. If anyone else has driven through the Mojave at night and seen something like this, please tell me. I need to know if I'm not the only one. Story 6. Same license plate. I was driving east on I-40, just past Flagstaff, trying to make it to Holbrook before dark. I hadn't planned on being on the road this late, but the client meeting had dragged on, and I didn't feel like staying in another roadside motel. The sun was dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the highway. I was listening to a podcast, something about productivity tips, but I wasn't really paying attention. I remember thinking I should stop for gas soon. The first time I noticed the dark gray sedan, it was 3 lanes over. I don't usually pay much attention to other cars, but something about it stuck with me, maybe the way it maintained an identical speed to mine, hovering just in my periphery. I changed lanes to pass a truck, and it did too. Subtle. Almost choreographed. I switched back. So did it. At first, I chalked it up to coincidence. Maybe someone just happened to be going the same speed, in the same direction. It happens. But 5 miles later, it was still there, always 1 or 2 lanes away, never passing, never falling behind. I turned off the podcast. Silence filled the car, except for the steady hum of tires on asphalt. I adjusted the rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of the sedan, no visible driver. Just the glint of the windshield. At the next light near the outskirts of town, one of those long stretches, where the road narrows and there's nothing but tall pines, I finally got a better look. We'd both rolled to a stop. I don't know what made me look down, but I did. The license plate, same state, same numbers, same exact plate as mine. I blinked, looked again. My plate, D7K492, the one behind me. D7K492. I sat perfectly still, suddenly hyper-aware of my hands on the steering wheel, the sweat on my palms. I turned my head slowly to look at the driver. Nothing. The car was gone. Just gone. No sound, no flash of taillights speeding away. Just empty road behind me. The light turned green and I didn't move. A horn blared behind me from a pickup that hadn't been there a second ago. I jolted forward, heart pounding, trying to reason it away. Maybe I imagined the plate. Maybe the sedan pulled into a side street so fast I didn't notice. I told myself that. I kept telling myself that. I pulled into a gas station 20 minutes later, still rattled. I walked around my car, checking my plate, photographing it, zooming in to make sure I hadn't misread it. D7K492, clear as day. I even asked the clerk inside if he'd seen a gray sedan come through recently. He looked at me like I was crazy. Only car that's been here in the last half hour is yours, he said. Back on the road, every time I checked the mirror, I half expected to see it again. I even tried driving a little under the speed limit, hoping to lure it out like bait. Nothing. Just the occasional truck or minivan, none of them familiar. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being tracked, not followed, not watched, tracked, like something was matching my movements. When I reached Holbrook, I parked at the back of the hotel lot, under a flickering streetlight. I sat there for a while before checking in. At one point, I thought I saw movement in the side mirror, just a blur, but when I looked, there was only the dark line of trees. The front desk clerk commented that I looked pale. I muttered something about driving too long. In the room, I pulled the curtains tight and sat by the window, looking out over the parking lot, empty, silent. I turned on the TV, not to watch anything, just for the noise. I couldn't stop thinking about that plate. What were the odds? I even Googled it, something about plate duplication errors, DMV mishaps. Nothing like what I saw. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the car perfectly still, perfectly matching mine. I started to wonder if I'd ever actually seen a driver, if the plate had been the only thing real. I don't know what scared me more, the possibility that I imagined the whole thing, or that I didn't. If anyone's ever experienced something like this, seeing your own license plate on another car that shouldn't exist, please tell me. I haven't driven since, and I'm not sure I ever will. Story 7, radio static, and headlights. It started somewhere near mile marker 201, just after I passed the last gas station before the long stretch of nothing. I'd made this drive across I-70 a dozen times, but always during the day. This time, a delay at work meant I didn't leave until almost midnight. The night was clear, the highway nearly empty, and my only company was the soft hum of the engine, and the classic rock station I always listened to when I drove at night. About 20 minutes past 2 a.m., I noticed a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror. Nothing unusual at first. The occasional semi or late-night traveler wasn't uncommon. But this one kept a strange distance. Not close enough to pass, but not falling back either. Just hovering there, matching my speed exactly. The radio crackled slightly as I glanced up to check again. The lights wavered, and that's when the static surged, louder this time, sharp and electric. I turned the dial, trying to tune into another frequency, but the noise persisted, only calming when the headlights steadied behind me again. Pattern repeated. Every time the car behind me drifted slightly left or right, the static would rise and fall, in sync with its movements. It wasn't random. It felt too precise, like whatever interference was happening wasn't technical, it was deliberate. I turned off the radio. The silence was immediate, but only for a moment. Then came a faint crackling, still present, but now behind me. Not through the speakers. I glanced at the dashboard to confirm the system was off. It was, yet the static persisted, faint and whispery, like it was leaking into the car from somewhere else. From the back seat, I didn't look immediately. I didn't want to. The rearview mirror showed only darkness, the faint outlines of the back headdress, and the glow of the pursuing car's headlights still behind me. But the sound was there closer now, like a soft hiss rising with each breath I took. I rolled down the window slightly, hoping it was just wind, but that only made it worse. The cold air didn't sound like static. This did. I adjusted the mirror slightly to get a better view. That's when I noticed something odd. The back seat was darker than it should have been. Not just unlit dark, like it was absorbing the dim glow from the dashboard. I blinked. The hiss flared for a second, louder and sharper, almost a whisper that wasn't quite a word. I turned around quickly, but of course, there was nothing there, just an empty seat, nothing out of place. But the silence that followed wasn't comforting, it felt staged. I pressed harder on the gas, wanting to put some distance between me and the other car. It stayed with me. I changed lanes. It followed. The static behind me returned, brief, rhythmic pulses now, like breathing through a blown speaker. I opened my mouth to say something to myself, maybe, but my throat caught. My ears began to ring, a low, internal hum that didn't belong to anything outside the car. When I passed under an overpass, the lights behind me blinked off for a split second. I glanced back, just shadows. And in that half second of darkness, the static surged again, full volume, as if someone had leaned forward and exhaled directly into my ear. I swerved slightly, heart pounding, and the car behind me did the same, perfectly synchronized. The road was empty except for us. I sped up. It stayed. I slowed down. So did it. The sound was no longer confined to the back seat. It seemed to bleed into the cabin, a pressure in the air, thick and metallic. The steering wheel felt warm. My palms were damp. The scent of plastic and ozone filled my noseburt, artificial, like something electronic had been left on too long. Then I made a mistake. I looked again. This time, there was something. A shape, low in the seat, hard to define, like a reflection of something that shouldn't have been reflecting anything. The static pulsed when I made eye contact through the mirror, if you can call it that. I didn't see a face, just ... a suggestion. A form leaning slightly to one side, not touching the seat, but occupying it. The lights from the car behind me flared, as if in response. I pulled into a rest stop. Gravel crunched under the tires as I stopped abruptly near the vending machines. I looked again. The back seat was empty. The other car continued past without slowing, its headlights washing over my windshield one final time before vanishing into the night. The static ended instantly. I sat there, not moving, for what must have been 15 minutes. No more sounds, no more lights. Just the ticking of the engine cooling down and my own breathing, shallow and uneven. I eventually turned the radio back on. It was just music again, nothing unusual. But I couldn't bring myself to keep driving. I slept in the front seat until sunrise, headlights off, doors locked, hands still gripping the wheel. I've taken I-70 during the day ever since. Never again at night. If anyone has experienced something like this, If your radio changes with the road behind you, please let me know. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 8, now in front of me. It started somewhere between mile marker 77 and the gas station with the broken neon sign. I remember that stretch because I always get uneasy driving it at night flat. Open, no shoulder, and the kind of darkness that swallows your high beams whole. I was the only car on that 2-lane highway. For what felt like an hour, just the steady hum of my engine and the occasional thump of expansion joints under the tires. Around 11:40 p.m., I noticed headlights behind me. Far back at first, then closer too quickly. They swerved gently from side to side, like someone adjusting their position but not quite holding a lane. It was a beat-up white SUV, paint chipped. On the front bumper and one of those black plastic hoods that flapped slightly in the wind. I slowed down a little just to let them pass, but they didn't. They stayed right on my bumper. I told myself they were probably tired like me, maybe drunk, maybe just anxious to get home. I flipped the rearview mirror upward to dim the glare and kept going, trying not to think about it. 5 more miles and I'd hit the exit for my town. I could lose them then. But when I checked the mirror again, they were gone, just gone. No turn-offs, no shoulder. No U-turn space for miles. I even rolled down my window to listen nothing but wind and the rhythmic tick of my turn signal still blinking from the last lane check. The SUV had disappeared. I drove another mile, slower now, heart knocking a little harder than before. And that's when I saw them again, not behind me. Ahead, same car. No headlights. Just the dull red glow of brake lights pulsing in the distance, like someone gently tapping the pedal, waiting. I didn't pass anyone. I'm sure of that. At first I thought it had to be another vehicle. Just coincidence. But as I got closer, I saw the same damage on the bumper. Same black hood. It was them. Somehow ahead of me. I let my foot ease off the gas. My car coasted silently in the darkness, and the brake lights ahead flickered once, twice, then held steady. I couldn't see the driver. Couldn't even tell if it was idling or just parked dead in the lane. I moved to the left to pass. As I did, their lights went out completely. No movement. Just sudden, complete black. Something in me refused to. Looked directly at the car as I passed. I kept my eyes straight, hands rigid on the wheel. Peripheral vision caught the outline of the SUV still, door slightly ajar. A smear of something on the window. Could have been dirt or handprints. I didn't slow down to check. A few miles later, my phone buzzed in the passenger seat. I picked it up at the next stop sign. No signal, no notification. Just that phantom. Vibration some people say they feel, but I never get those. Not until tonight. When I looked up from the phone, I was behind the SUV again. Headlights, brake lights, perfectly aligned with my hood. This time, the license plate was missing. I pulled over, turned off the engine, sat there breathing into the silence, trying to catch some logical thread. Maybe there were 2 cars. Maybe I was just tired and looping around some weird bypass road. But the clock said 12:18 a.m., and I hadn't turned once. I waited 10 minutes. No cars passed in either direction. Finally, I restarted the engine and merged back onto the road. The SUV was gone. I thought it was over until the next curve. Right at the crest of the hill, it appeared again. Not on the road, on the shoulder. Driver's side door open, as if someone had just stepped out. No one visible. Just that car, waiting. I didn't stop. I don't think I even blinked. I drove the rest of the way home without checking my mirrors. I parked in my driveway and stared at the house for a full minute before getting out. Everything looked normal, quiet, porch light on, but when I glanced down the street, I saw taillights. Red, faint, pulsing, now in front of me again. If anyone else has seen something like this, please let me know. Am I losing time? Or was I never alone on that road? Story 9. Mirrored movements. I wasn't planning to drive that night. But when my sister texted saying our mom was asking for me again, I gave in. The route from Athens to her place near Dalanega cuts through the Appalachian foothills, mostly two-lane roads flanked by dense pine and decaying fences. It's quiet that time of night, the kind of quiet that makes your engine hum feel too loud. But I've driven it dozens of times. I could do it half asleep. Honestly, I probably have. I noticed the car around the third bend past the gas station with the broken O in Food Mart. Black sedan, nothing fancy. It didn't tailgate, didn't flash its lights, just followed. I didn't think much of it at first. Highway. 52 isn't exactly a traffic jam waiting to happen, but it mirrored me too precisely. When I dipped below the speed limit at a sharp curve, so did it. When I flicked my signal briefly, by habit, it blinked too. That's when something twisted in my stomach. I sped up gently. So did the sedan. I tapped my brakes. 2 red eyes blinked behind me. I moved into the left lane just before the bridge. With the crooked railing, so did the sedan. Not half a second later. No delay. Not even hesitation. Like it was waiting for my move. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone using adaptive cruise control. Or some poor soul just as nervous about deer darting across the road as I was. I turned on the radio for distraction static, then a muffled voice reading weather updates. I turned the knob again, skipping stations, but none of them came through cleanly. The silence between broadcasts filled the car like fog. That's when I remembered the dash cam. I installed it last month after a near miss with a semi that drifted into my lane. I tapped the little button beneath it, checked the display. It showed the live rear view. Just blackness, my taillights reflected faintly off the road. No headlights behind me, no sedan. I blinked. My eyes went from the mirror to the dash cam, back and forth, nothing. But when I looked through the rear view, again, there it was. Headlights, steady and sharp. I could swear I saw the silhouette of a driver, hands at 10 and 2. Still no license plate. I pulled over at the next overlook, one of those half-circle gravel areas with faded signs about elevation. The other car slowed too. I felt it more than saw it. But by the time I stepped out into the cool mountain air, the road was empty. Just trees swaying in the wind and the soft creak of my cooling engine. I replayed the dashcam footage on my phone. The video showed my car pulling over, nothing behind me. Just me, breathing heavily, walking around with the phone in my hand like a fool. No headlights ever appear. No car passes, nothing, just wind. I got back in, locked the doors. Every muscle in my chest felt tight, like I'd held my breath too long. I debated calling someone, maybe my sister, but what would I even say? That I was being followed by a phantom car that doesn't appear on video. I started driving again, slower this time, more aware of every bump in the asphalt, every shift in shadow between the trees. Not 2 minutes later, the headlights reappeared in the mirror. Same distance, same rhythm. I tried to trick it, swerved slightly left as if preparing to turn. The car behind did the same. I faked a right, so did it. I pressed my emergency lights, then turned them off. Its flashers blinked in perfect sync. My throat dried out. A truck passed in the opposite direction. Its headlights lit up the road for a second, and the space behind me was empty. My rear view reflected only my own taillights and the glimmer of the truck disappearing in the curve. The second the truck vanished, the other headlights reappeared. Same spot, same angle. I couldn't keep driving. My hands started trembling, and I was afraid I'd jerked the wheel too hard. I took the next exit, an old service road I didn't recognize. The headlights followed. The road narrowed, rougher terrain. Eventually, it opened into a clearing with a rusted fence and a no trespassing sign that looked like it had been clawed, not just weathered. I stopped, waited. The car behind didn't move. Then, inch by inch, it pulled forward until it was right behind me, a few yards. Close enough to see the faint shape inside. I tried to look through the mirror, but the reflection shimmered oddly, like heat distortion. Then the figure raised its hand, slowly, deliberately, and I realized it was doing the exact same thing I was. I lifted my hand again, my real hand, and the shadow inside the car did too, not in response. At the exact same time, I waved. It waved. I reached for the glove compartment. It did too. It was mirroring me. I jerked the wheel, reversing hard, nearly hitting a tree as I spun back onto the road. The mirror showed nothing. No headlights, no car. The dash cam kept rolling. I didn't stop driving until I reached my mom's driveway. I killed the engine, sat in silence. Watched the dash cam footage in reverse. No lights behind me the entire time. No turn onto the service road. Just black road and me talking to myself, reacting to something that on screen wasn't there. But here's the part I can't stop thinking about. At the moment I raised my hand to the mirror and the shadow did the same. The dashcam caught my face. My eyes were open, wide with panic. But in the reflection, my lips were moving. And I wasn't speaking. If anyone else has experienced something like this, please let me know. Am I going crazy? Or did I see myself from somewhere else? Story 10, no wheels in the fog. I was driving back from a conference in Boulder, cutting through the mountain edge highways just before dawn. The air was dense with that kind of fog you don't notice at first. It just creeps into your headlights until the world turns into a silver blur. I had my playlist on low, the kind of ambient stuff that usually keeps me focused. But something didn't feel right. The road was familiar, but my stomach felt tight. I should have stopped for coffee. There's this long stretch of Road Highway 36 where cell service dies completely. No exits, no lights, no gas stations. Just black asphalt winding through hills. I always hated that part, but I figured if I kept my speed steady, I'd be past it in 10 minutes. Then I noticed the lights behind me. At first, just two faint orbs, flickering through the mist like someone shaking a flashlight. They were far back, but wrong. I slowed slightly, expecting the car to catch up and pass me. But it didn't. The lights moved in these irregular bursts, too fast and too slow. It reminded me of an old VHS tape, like something lagging in reality. My first thought was drunk driver. My second was maybe my rearview mirror was dirty. I wiped it with my sleeve. The lights were closer now. I couldn't see the vehicle clearly, just the glow and a vague shape dark low to the ground. I told myself it was probably an old sedan with bad suspension. Maybe they had fog lights on a weird setting. But the longer I watched, the more I felt something was missing. I blinked hard, squinted, adjusted the mirror again. That's when my stomach dropped. There were no wheels. The car was gliding. Not like a Tesla's smooth turn or a quiet engine. This thing hovered. Not high, just a few inches above the pavement, but the fog below it didn't move the way it should. It folded unnaturally around the shape, like smoke refusing to touch it. I tapped the brakes. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the fog was playing tricks. But then I saw it jerk sideways, no tilt, no friction, like a bug skipping over water. I gripped the wheel. My knuckles went white. I kept checking the mirror every few seconds. It stayed behind me, not gaining, not falling back, just hovering there. For a moment, I thought I saw movement inside. Not a person, just a shifting outline where the driver should be. My chest tightened. I wanted to pull over, let it pass. But where? There were no shoulders, only guardrails and fog. I tried calling someone, but there was nothing. No bars, just the red SOS symbol blinking uselessly. I whispered shit under my breath as if keeping quiet would help. The air inside the car felt heavier. Like pressure was building, I turned off the music, listened, my engine hummed. Tires rolled, but behind me nothing. No sound from it. No engine, no tires, just those flickering lights and fog. 10 minutes stretched into 20, then 30. It stayed the same distance behind me the whole time. I started whispering to myself nonsense phrases, prayers, whatever came out. My eyes burned from not blinking. I knew I was close to the next town. I recognized a bent speed sign and the sloped curve before the hill. I just had to make it to the next stoplight. The fog began to thin. A pale orange glow appeared up ahead the first streetlight in what felt like an hour. I exhaled hard. I could almost see the gas station canopy. I looked one last time into the mirror. The lights were gone, just gone. Not dimmed, not turned off, gone. Like someone cut them out of reality. I slowed as I reached the light. My hands were shaking. I pulled into the station and parked under the brightest pump light. My legs barely worked. I stumbled out, grabbed the metal nozzle, but didn't start fueling. I just stood there trying to calm my breath. Then I looked at my rear bumper, damp from fog, some dirt, and 4 long, thin smears that started at the license plate and ended mid-trunk. Not handprints, not claw marks, just lines. Almost like dragging fingers, but from what? I never drove that stretch of Highway 36 again. I take the long route now, even if it adds 30 minutes, and I never drive it at night. I don't care if people think that's silly. You didn't see how it moved. You didn't hear the silence it brought with it. If anyone else has seen lights like that, something that moves without touching the ground, please tell me. I just want to know it wasn't only me. Story 11. Voices over the GPS. I was 2 hours into the drive when I noticed the black sedan in my rear view. At first, it didn't mean anything. Just another car pacing me along the interstate. But 40 miles later, when every exit I passed gas station, rest stop, slow down, they were still there. Always a few car lengths behind, I started to feel it. That tightening in the chest. Like something inside knew before I did. I tapped the steering wheel and muttered, "Calm down. You're being paranoid." That's when the GPS spoke, not in its usual robotic tone, but something lower, more human. They're still watching. I blinked and looked at the device. It glowed like normal. Same blue map, same cheerful arrow bouncing up the highway. I even unplugged it and plugged it back in. The voice didn't repeat. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was tired. But when I glanced in the rear view again, the sedan shifted lanes without warning. Not to pass me, just to match me. Now in the left lane, still pacing. I hadn't moved. The GPS remained silent after that. No prompts, no recalculating. It didn't even warn me when I missed a turn 15 minutes later, distracted by a set of headlights that flared behind me, then dimmed almost immediately. The sedan had fallen back a bit, but not much. I couldn't see the driver. The windows were tinted darker than they should have been for legal limits. I told myself I'd take the next exit, just to prove I was overreacting. Just to shake the tension. The exit ramp came up too fast, and I turned sharply. Tires chirped, and I felt the right side of the car tilt slightly before settling. Gravel crunched under me as I veered into a dimly lit gas station. It looked closed. One overhead. Light flickered, casting a pulse of yellow onto cracked pavement. The sedan didn't follow. It kept going, gliding past on the highway like it hadn't even noticed. I sat there for a moment, engine idling. Relief didn't come, just a hollow quiet. I turned off the ignition. My hands trembled slightly. The GPS was still lit. The screen was black. but the device hadn't shut down. I reached for it, and it spoke again. Soft, almost whispering, "Don't get out." I froze. It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded disappointed. I pulled my hand back and waited. 10 seconds. Then 20. Nothing. The display flickered once, then resumed its usual map. The route had shifted now, pointing me to a road that didn't exist on any signage around me. I laughed under my breath, nervous, high-pitched. Nope. I restarted the car and backed up fast, spinning gravel. I turned the opposite direction from the GPS's instructions and merged back onto the highway. The sedan was gone, but the feeling hadn't left me. I drove another 20 minutes, watching every shadow, every curve in the road. Then, without warning, my headlights caught it parked on the shoulder. The same black sedan, empty, hazard lights flashing slowly. I slowed, heart racing. There was no driver, no one inside, but something about the angle of the car. It looked like it had just stopped. Still warm. I didn't stop. I kept going, faster now. The GPS chimed softly. They got out. That voice again, calm, matter-of-fact, like someone reciting a bedtime story. My skin crawled. I turned it off, held the power button until the screen went black, but in the silence that followed, I could still hear breathing. It wasn't mine. At the next town, I pulled into a motel, old, empty, one neon sign sputtering over the word vacancy. I didn't sleep. The TV played late-night infomercials, with the volume muted. I kept checking the window, expecting headlights to crawl into view. Nothing came. Around 3 a.m., I took the GPS and walked it to the dumpster outside. I hesitated. It was completely dark, no sound. As I dropped it into the metal bin, it vibrated once in my hand. Just once, then silence. I drove home the next morning. Bright daylight, birds, traffic, people. It all felt fake. Like a movie set. I got a new GPS a week later. Different brand. New voice. But sometimes when I'm alone on the road, I still hear it. Not through the speaker. In the space between turns. In that soft static when no one's talking. They're still watching. If anyone else has ever heard a voice that didn't belong to the device, please say something. I just need to know I'm not the only one. Story 12. Rear view flicker. I wasn't even halfway through my drive when it started. It was late past 11 p.m. and the interstate stretched ahead in that familiar tunnel of headlights and reflective paint. I was heading back from my sister's place, about a 2-hour drive through mostly rural stretches. There weren't many other cars out, just the occasional pair of headlights cresting a hill behind me or disappearing into the distance ahead. But there was one car that didn't behave like the others. I first noticed it after a gas stop. I pulled back onto the highway, merged smoothly, and checked my rearview mirror habit, really. The headlights of a dark sedan flickered behind me, maybe 200 feet back. Nothing unusual, except that when I glanced again a few seconds later, it was right on my bumper. I hadn't heard it accelerate. There was no engine roar, no flash of headlights to signal impatience. It was just suddenly there. I gave it space, changed lanes, let it pass. But it didn't. I watched in the mirror as it hovered diagonally. Behind me, offset just enough to be visible in the corner of my eye, like it was pacing me intentionally. I turned my head to check through the rear side window. Nothing. Just empty highway. The flicker kept happening. I'd look in the mirror, and the sedan would be tailing me closely. Then I'd check again, and it would be farther back, almost out of sight. Once, it was so close I could see the reflection of my own brake lights in its windshield. Another time, I thought it had exited entirely, until it reappeared in the mirror without warning. Each time I turned to confirm with my eyes, the road behind was empty. Only when viewed indirectly did it exist. I started testing it. I stare at the mirror for long stretches, waiting to catch the moment of change, but there was never a transition. One glance, 20 feet behind. Next glance, completely gone. Then a mile later, there it was again, offset to the left like it was riding in my blind spot. But the lane next to me was clear. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. I turned off the radio. The silence in the car became dense, like sound was being absorbed instead of merely absent. The air vents clicked softly. The hum of the tires was steady but felt isolated, like the road wasn't fully connected to where I was. I adjusted the rearview mirror again. The angle hadn't changed. Still, the car shifted positions each time I looked. I thought about pulling over. I even slowed down as an exit approached. But when I looked at the mirror again, the sedan was gone. I mean, completely. No trace. I merged back onto the highway and kept driving, unsure if I felt relief or dread. Then I saw something new. For just a second less than a blink, the reflection didn't show the road behind me at all. It showed something else. It was subtle, like a frame spliced into a reel of film, a flicker of an interior, not mine. Dim yellow light, a ceiling fan, unmoving, then blacktop again. My brain tried to dismiss it, to rationalize. I blamed fatigue. I hadn't had coffee since early evening. My eyes were probably dry, strained. But the next time I looked, I saw a handprint on the rear windshield, small, pressed flat against the glass. When I turned around, there was nothing there. I started, talking aloud. "You're tired," I told myself. "You've been driving too long. Your brain is playing tricks." But the words felt brittle. I didn't believe them. My gut was curling inward, a cold, primitive fear I hadn't felt since childhood. Not fear of danger, but fear of presence. The kind of fear that doesn't come from what you see, but what you sense waiting to be seen. The sedan came back just after midnight. No lights, just a suggestion of form like headlights had etched its shape into my mirror. This time, it didn't move. It stayed locked at the exact same distance, no matter how fast or slow I drove. The speedometer became irrelevant. The other lanes were empty. I felt like the entire road had been set aside for us, like I was inside a loop. Then my phone vibrated, a notification. But when I picked it up, there was no new message. The screen was black, dead. I hadn't noticed the battery drop. I glanced at the mirror. The sedan's lights blinked off, then on again, and the rearview glass cracked down the middle. A clean fracture, perfectly vertical. When I looked around, the mirror was intact. No crack. But I felt something shift in the air, like someone had just stepped into the car with me. I didn't make it home. Not right away. I pulled into a well-lit rest stop, parked under a buzzing fluorescent, and stayed there until sunrise. Every time I looked into the mirror after that, it was normal. Just the road, my back seat, the interior of my car. But I haven't driven at night since. And the rear view, I've covered it with duct tape. If anyone else has seen something like this, tell me, especially if the mirror ever showed you a room that wasn't yours. I still don't know what I saw. Story 13, driverless reflection. I didn't plan to stop. I only pulled into the gas station because my hands wouldn't stop shaking on the wheel. That stretch of road between the last exit and here, just 20 minutes, maybe felt like hours. The highway had gone quiet after midnight, and yet that car stayed behind me the entire time. No matter how fast I went, no matter which lane I took. Always 3 car lengths back, always there. It was a black sedan, its windows too dark to see inside. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone on a long night drive like me. But the longer it followed, the more deliberate it felt. I'd slow down, so would it. I'd switch lanes, it followed. I took an exit at random just to shake it, and it followed me off the ramp. That's when I felt the nausea crawl up my throat. I pulled into the gas station hoping it would pass me, but it didn't. It turned in too. I watched it in my mirror, heart pounding. It didn't stop at any pump, didn't even slow down. It just idled in the far corner facing me. Engine humming. No lights on. It just sat there like it was watching. But what made my stomach flip was what I saw or didn't see through the windshield. There was no driver. I blinked, leaned forward. My headlights caught the reflective tint on the other car, and for a moment I thought maybe it was just too dark to see inside. But the more I stared, the more I realized I could see something, my own face. Looking back, except, not quite right, my reflection blinked after I did. Just a second too late. I turned away fast, stumbling out of my car, telling myself I needed air, maybe caffeine. I walked into the convenience store. Inside, the clerk barely looked up. I tried to act normal. Browsed a few shelves, grabbed a drink I didn't want, paid with shaky hands. I asked if they'd seen anyone come in from that black car outside. They looked confused. Said they hadn't seen another car at all. I stood at the window for a while, sipping my drink, trying to calm down. The black car was still there. Still, off in the corner. I tried to make sense of it, maybe a trick of the light, maybe exhaustion. But every time I glanced back, the reflection blinked just a little too late. Like it was trying to copy me, or learning. I didn't go back to my car right away. I waited for someone else to pull in anyone. A delivery van eventually rolled up and parked a few pumps over. I went back outside and walked casually around, pretending to check my tires. The black car was still there, but now, the reflection wasn't me. I froze. It looked like me, same hair, same jacket, but it was tilted at an odd angle, like its head had been pressed against the inside of the glass. The mouth was just slightly open. I couldn't see the eyes. That's when the engine of the black car cut off. It was sudden, like a breath being held. The silence wrapped around the lot. Even the night insects seemed to hush. I looked toward the store. The clerk was gone. The lights inside were still on, but no one stood behind the counter. I don't remember opening my door, but I found myself back inside my own car, keys already in the ignition. The black car remained still, but the air around it felt wrong. I tried not to look. I tried to drive away without seeing it again, but I couldn't help one last glance in the rearview mirror. It wasn't parked anymore. I floored it. I don't know how long I drove. I didn't stop again that night. Not until the sun came up and the horizon looked normal again. But even then, I kept checking my mirrors. Not for the black car. I never saw it again, but for something else. Sometimes I catch myself blinking and wonder if my reflection is a second behind. If anyone's ever had something like this happen, if you've seen something mimic you a little too closely, please let me know. Please, I need to know it's not just me. Story 14, the pothole test. I drive that stretch of road between Needles and Barstow more often than I care to admit. It's long, dry, and practically deserted after dark. Just you, the desert, and whatever thoughts manage to crawl in. Yesterday, sometime past midnight, I hit that bend near the old billboard with the torn face. That's where it happened. Where I first noticed it wasn't just me on that road. I've known about that pothole for years. It's carved right into the right lane, just past a faded mile marker, wide enough to jolt your whole car if you're not careful. So I swerved instinctively to avoid it like always. But something about the timing of the headlights behind me made me glance in the mirror, and that's when I saw the other car mirror my exact movement. Same moment. Same angle. I thought maybe coincidence. Maybe the driver knew the road too. But curiosity is a weird thing, especially when you're alone with it. So a mile later, I tested it again. Another pothole, smaller this time, I veered slightly. So did they. Not a second later, not a moment of hesitation. It was like watching my own reflection blink. That stretch of desert gives you this endless blackness on either side of the asphalt. You start to feel like the only thing real is the road directly ahead. Everything else could just be illusion. I slowed down, so did they. I signaled left. Blink, blink. Their turn signal blinked too. I couldn't make out the car. Just headlights. Not too bright, not too dim, but steady. No variation. No flicker when we passed under the rear street lamp. No glare on my rear view. It was there, but not. And I got this sensation low in my gut that if I stopped looking, I'd forget it entirely. Eventually, I pulled over. There's this gravel shoulder near an abandoned gas station, no lights, just the outline of a collapsed canopy. I rolled down my window, letting the silence press in, expecting to hear the gravel crunch behind me, or at least see headlights pass. But nothing came. I waited 10 minutes, then 20. No cars. No wind. Just that vast quiet, like the world had paused. I got out, walked around the car, half expecting to see fresh tire marks behind me. There were none. The dust lay undisturbed. No sign of anyone else ever being there. I thought maybe they'd turned off. Maybe there was a side road I missed. But I drove that route again this morning in daylight. There's no turnoff for 20 miles. No exits. Just one straight line of asphalt cutting through nowhere. I checked my dashcam footage, hoping I'd see something confirmation. But the tape skips, literally skips. The part where the second swerve should have happened just jumps one frame alone. The next I'm parked near the gas station. I didn't sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw headlights in the mirror, moving when I moved. Only they weren't just following. They were anticipating, like something already inside my thoughts. A mirror that didn't need glass. This morning, I looked up stories, accidents near that stretch, sightings, rumors. I found nothing. But there's a thread on a forum I never saw before. A single post titled Barstow Echo. No replies. Just a sentence. If it does what? You do before you do it. Pull over. Don't let it pass. And now I can't stop wondering what would have happened if I hadn't pulled over. Have you ever had a car mimic you like that? Not follow, but copy move for move. If you've seen anything like it, please, I need to know. I'm not the only one. Story 15, speed trap loop. I passed the speed trap sign 3 times. In under 10 minutes. Same angle, same car behind me shifting lanes. Either I was looping or the car behind me was. It started after I left the gas station off Route 19. It was around 9:45 p.m., dark enough that the only light came from the highway lamps and the occasional flash of a distant billboard. I'd filled the tank, grabbed a lukewarm coffee, and got back on the road heading south. I remember checking the clock. I remember the first speed trap sign, speed limit strictly enforced. It was one of those portable LED trailers that flash your speed back at you, though it was off. Just a black screen. 5 minutes later, I saw it again. Same trailer, same tilt to the left, and the same graffiti sprayed along the bottom. Slow down to disappear. I hadn't noticed that the first time. I laughed under my breath, assuming there were several signs along the route. Then I noticed the car behind me. It was a black sedan, headlights slightly off alignment, so one beam glared higher than the other. It had been behind me since the gas station, I thought. I remembered it pulling out just a second after I did. At first, I assumed it was just coincidence. The highway isn't exactly crowded at night, and plenty of people take the same exits. But when I saw the sign again, speed limit strictly enforced, same graffiti, same tilt, I looked at the car. The sedan shifted into the left lane at the same moment. Like it was syncing with me, I changed lanes. So did it. I accelerated. It matched. Always 2 car lengths behind, never closer, never further. I turned on the radio to drown out the hum of the tires, but every station was static, even the strong ones. I glanced at the clock again. 9:52. I was sure it had been that time a few minutes ago. I touched the screen. It blinked to 9:51, then back to 9:52. I slowed down deliberately. To 45, under the limit. The sedan slowed too. I pulled off onto the shoulder, flicking my hazards. The car passed me slowly, then stopped 30 feet ahead, engine idling. No movement inside, no driver silhouette. I waited. The sedan never moved. After a full minute, I pulled back onto the road. The car didn't follow. But when I passed the speed trap again, it was in front of me. Exact same trailer, graffiti, tilt. The black sedan was merging from the on-ramp ahead. I swear to God, I saw it reappear. Now my pulse was in my ears. I turned off onto an exit ramp I didn't recognize. It wasn't listed on the GPS, which had stopped updating my location. The screen still showed the same stretch of highway. I drove for another 5 minutes, hoping to loop out of whatever this was. But the sign was there again. The sedan 2 behind me, this time closer. I tried calling someone, but the phone had no signal. Just a loading icon. I rolled down my window and leaned out slightly. The air smelled the same as it did by the gas station, warm, sharp, like fuel and hot pavement. Then I saw the sedan, and my mirror flashed its headlights once. No honk, no pass. Just that flash. I slammed the brakes and pulled onto a dirt path beside the road. The trees were dense, and I could barely see the sky. I killed the engine and lights. Sat there breathing, trying to feel real. I checked the time. 9:45. Again, I swear I hadn't. Turned around, but somehow I was at the gas station again. Same dim lights, same coffee in my cup holder, still warm. The receipt on the passenger seat said 9:41 p.m. I hadn't bought gas. I turned around to look out the rear windshield. Nothing. Just as I was about to start the engine, I saw motion in the side mirror. A black sedan pulling in behind me, headlights flickering. I'm still here. I've tried 3 different exits, 2 rest stops, even called 911. The number doesn't exist. The sign shows up no matter which way I go. If anyone has experienced something like this, please tell me. I don't know how many more loops I've got left before something else changes. Story 16. Sudden passenger warning. I don't usually drive that stretch of highway at night. It's a long, flat vein of cracked asphalt running through pine fields and empty farmland, and I've always found it eerily quiet, too quiet. Like something's being held back. But that night, I was running late after a client meeting ran over, and the GPS said this was the fastest route home. For nearly 40 minutes, I didn't see a single car, just the dull rhythm of the tires on the seams of the road and the faint green glow of my dashboard. Outside the windshield, everything looked washed out and empty, like the world had been paused. That's probably why I noticed the headlights the second they crested the horizon behind me. At first, just a distant glow, then brighter, closer. Uncomfortably so. It was a dark Jeep, maybe an older model. Its lights weren't flickering, no erratic movements, just steady, insistent. I kept my speed, but the Jeep didn't pass. It hovered behind me like it was waiting for something. I told myself it was just coincidence. Maybe the driver was being cautious on the dark stretch. But then it mirrored every lane change I made, every single one. That's when I looked down and saw it, passenger detected. The words glowed amber on my dash. My heart gave one hard knock in my chest. I glanced at the seat beside me, empty. My jacket was crumpled there, my work bag on the floor. I reached over and pressed a hand. Down on the cushion, nothing. Cold fabric. I laughed too sharply. Sensors mess up. Maybe the bag shifted. Maybe the car hit a bump. I turned the message off. Not even 10 seconds later, it lit up again. Passenger detected. I felt something tighten in the back of my throat. This time, I didn't reach over. I just looked at the road, hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. My mirrors reflected only the Jeep's glare. The highway ahead remained dead empty, but I couldn't shake the idea that something was here, not beside me, exactly. Not visible, but here. I rolled down the window a crack. Cold night air rushed in. I needed sound, any sound beyond the soft engine hum and the internal drone of my thoughts. That's when I realized I couldn't hear the Jeep. No engine. Number. Tire noise. Just lights. Then it vanished. One moment, it was behind me, close enough to make out the silhouette of its grille, and the next, gone. No swerve, no exit, no dimming lights, just absence. I slowed the car. Squinted into my mirrors. Still nothing. The highway stretched endlessly, in either direction. And then came a soft tap on the passenger window. I nearly swerved into the ditch. The noise wasn't loud. Just a light, deliberate tap, like the back of a fingernail against glass. I turned, heart pounding so hard it made. My vision pulse. The window was dark. Nothing visible outside. No movement. Passenger detected. The message was back. I pulled over. Not a full stop, just slowed to a crawl on the shoulder. My hand hovered near the door lock. My brain couldn't keep up. I should have called someone. But who? What? Would I even say? Then the radio turned on by itself. Static, no station. Just a low, rising hiss that seemed to fill the car from the floor up. I reached for the knob, but my hand froze halfway. I didn't want to touch it. I couldn't explain why, but the idea of interacting with anything in that moment felt wrong. Like I was being watched, not just followed. I focused on breathing, on keeping my eyes on the road. I started driving again. At exactly 63 miles per hour, the message vanished. Passenger left vehicle. I didn't slow down. I didn't look around. I kept both hands on the wheel and focused on the distance ahead, the way the yellow lines blurred past my headlights. My chest ached from holding my breath so long. 15 minutes later, I reached the outskirts of town. Streetlights returned, buildings, life. I pulled into the first gas station I saw and sat there, parked under the harsh fluorescence, engine still running. I turned toward the passenger seat once more. The air there felt warmer, like someone had been breathing. If anyone else has ever seen a warning like that passenger, detected when you're completely alone, please tell me. Please, I haven't. Taken that highway sense that I keep checking the seat every single time. Story 17, the unmarked exit. I know this sounds ridiculous, but the exit wasn't there before. I drive this stretch of highway almost daily straight shot through. Farmland and flat nothing between my town and the city. I've memorized every sign, every mile marker, even the way the trees lean. So when I saw a faded green sign with no number, no name, just a blank metal plate, my foot hovered over the brake. Something about it pulled at me. Maybe it was the black SUV that had been riding my bumper for miles. Maybe it was instinct. I took the exit. Hard right. No one in front of me. But when I checked the rearview mirror, yeah, the SUV followed. The ramp curved down into a tunnel of trees, darker than the rest of the highway, like they grew over the road deliberately. I don't know how I missed this turn all these years. I should have known better, but adrenaline talks louder than logic. I flicked my signal off, not that anyone was around. There were no lines on the road, no reflectors, just cracked pavement that groaned under my tires. My hands were slick on the wheel. I tapped my phone screen. Google Maps hadn't updated. My blue dot hovered in an empty gray space. Rerouting, it said, then nothing. No street name, no service. The trees thickened. My headlights bounced off trunks and brushed too close to the shoulder. No signs, no lights, no other cars. Just the SUV behind me, 2 car lengths back, matching my speed. I slowed. It slowed. I sped up. It did too. My heart hammered like a second engine. I took a turn without thinking, just to lose it. The pavement narrowed, then crumbled into loose gravel. Still, it followed. I finally pulled over, slammed the gear into park, and stepped out. Nothing. No wind, no crickets, just the hiss of cooling metal and my own shallow breath. I walked toward the SUV, bracing for confrontation, but it wasn't there. I swear it was behind me the whole time. I even heard the gravel crunching under its tires. But now, there was only my car, parked at the edge of a bend. The road behind. Me, gone. Just dense woods and a rusted fence, like I'd driven through it without leaving a trace. I checked my phone again. No signal, no location. Just a spinning wheel where the map should be. I didn't want to panic. So I got back in, turned the engine, and reversed. Nothing. My headlights caught on the trees, but the path I'd come through was sealed, completely overgrown. I hadn't even been driving that long, 10 minutes. Maybe 15, but the forest looked untouched, like no road had ever been cut through here. I sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to remember how many turns I took. Whether I imagined the SUV, whether this was some kind of private property or hunting trail. But then the clock on the dash blinked, 3:21 a.m. I'd left work at 6 p.m. It didn't make sense. I drove forward. The road, or whatever it was, wound deeper. Trees arched overhead, their branches gnarled and close enough to scrape the roof. My high beams flickered, then steadied. I kept going until I saw a light faint. Yellowish, like a porch lamp. It was a gas station or something like it. A single pump, ancient, rusted. A booth beside it with cracked windows and no one inside. I stopped, got out. The door to the booth creaked open as I approached, but the interior was empty, dust-covered. Papers, an old cash register, and a calendar stuck on February 1987. Then I heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel behind me. I spun around, heart thudding in my ears. The SUV was there again, parked beside my car, engine off. Windows dark. No movement. I didn't wait. I ran back to my car, locked the doors, and floored it. The station faded behind me in the rear view, swallowed by darkness. I didn't look back again. The road eventually curved upward. My signal flickered to life. The map reappeared, snapping, to a location miles from where I should have been. I hit the highway again from a different on-ramp one I'd never seen, labeled Exit 0. Just like that, I was back among taillights and traffic signs. I never found that road again. I've driven the same route every day, searching. The exit's gone. No blank sign, no break in the fence. I even tried marking the location on GPS, but it leads to a dead end on the map, just trees and flat terrain. But I'm not crazy, because sometimes late at night, I still see that SUV in my mirror. Not close. Just far enough that I can't see who's driving. If anyone else has ever taken an exit that didn't exist, please tell me. Am I the only one who came back? Story 18. Static on the left lane. I drive the same stretch of highway every Thursday night, from the city back to my place near the river. It's a 40-minute route, mostly quiet after 9, especially in late spring when the daylight fades slow and the air carries that dry, humming warmth. You start to notice things when you've repeated the same path 100 times. Cracks in the pavement that look like constellations. That one flickering streetlight near mile marker 14. The way your tires hum different on the patch sections of asphalt. It's a rhythm, familiar, which is why I knew something was off before I could explain it. The left lane had been closed all week. Maintenance signs, striped barricades, orange cones lined up like silent sentries. I'd seen the crews on Tuesday, tearing up a stretch where the shoulder dips toward a drainage ditch. Thursday night, all the markers were still there, still bright, still unmistakably blocking the lane. But in my mirror, the car behind me kept drifting left. Not aggressively, more like floating. The tires didn't bounce or swerve around the cones. They just passed through. I blinked hard, squinted at the mirror. My headlights cast long, steady shadows across the barricades, and yet the vehicle, an older sedan, matte black, or maybe just dirty, was straddling the divide like nothing was in its way. I slowed a little, thinking maybe the cones had been moved. Maybe the lane was open after all. But my GPS still warned of closures, and the signs ahead glowed with the same LEFT. Lane closed message they had all week. Then it was beside me. No engine noise, no acceleration. It just arrived there, pacing me perfectly. I turned my head, slow and unsure. The windows were tinted, darker than I felt legal, and something about the way the body of the car seemed to shimmer slightly under the streetlights made me grip the wheel tighter. I couldn't see a driver. I told myself maybe the glare was wrong, maybe the angle or tint was just throwing me off. But even when I leaned forward, trying to catch a glimpse of that thing, the next sign was a bright red X over the left lane. Flashing arrow pointed everyone to the right. I merged accordingly, as did every car ahead of me, except the one beside me. It kept to the left. It didn't hesitate. It didn't swerve. It didn't even slow down. It maintained its speed, its line, and glided straight through the barriers as if they weren't there. My breath hitched. I instinctively touched the brake, but no one was behind me anymore. The rest of the road had gone quiet. I looked. Again, the sedan was further ahead now, still in the closed lane. The cones rippled behind it, briefly shaking like disturbed grass, then settling as if nothing had passed through. I checked my mirrors. The road behind me was empty. In front, the car took the curve at mile 14, the one with the flickering light overhead. That light strobed white, then orange, then went dark as the sedan passed under it. When I followed, moments later, the bulb was back to normal. That stretch of pavement looked untouched. No tracks, no debris. I pulled into the right lane harder than necessary, trying to shake off the feeling. I told myself it had to be some road crew vehicle, maybe a new type of emergency clearance car, or maybe I had missed a notice and the lane was open temporarily. But the signs continued: stay right, left lane closed, merge ahead. There was no official detour into that lane, no exceptions, and no reason that car should have moved like that, like it didn't care about physics. Half a mile later, the radio died. No pop, no static, just dead air. Then a sharp hiss filled the car, like someone dragging cloth across a mic. It pulsed irregularly, like a heartbeat. I turned the knob, switched channels, even hit the power button, but the sound persisted. Then a voice, faint, stuttered, emerged beneath the static. I couldn't catch the words, just a syllable that repeated. Left, lane, left. I turned it off, fully. The silence after was worse. At the final merge before the bridge, the left lane disappeared entirely, eaten by barriers and exposed gravel. And yet the sedan was ahead of me again, further this time. Near the horizon, where the pavement turned silver under the moonlight, I watched it dissolve into the shimmer of heat rising off the road. No dust kicked up. No brake lights. Just dot. Gone. I took the exit early. Parked at a gas station I didn't need. Sat in the lot with the windows cracked, listening. The radio wouldn't turn back on. My phone had bars but couldn't load anything. No music, no calls, not even GPS. When I finally dared to head home again, I stayed in the right lane, driving. Slower than usual, heart hammering at every flicker of shadow. I didn't see the car again that night, but the next Thursday, the left lane was open, and I still didn't take it. If anyone drives Route 47 past mile 14, especially at night, please tell me if you've seen that sedan. Black, silent, left lane. Am I the only one who saw it glide through? Story 18, duplicate car, different driver. I noticed it just after I passed the last gas station before the old state highway cuts into open farmland. The road there is flat and quiet, with those long, unbroken stretches of two-lane blacktop that seem to bend under the weight of the heat. I was all ready. Since my boss had called me in early the next morning, and I'd left my apartment in Tulsa later than I should have. The sky was that muted orange before dusk, and I remember thinking, this'll be a long drive in the dark. But then I checked my rearview mirror. There was a car behind me. Not unusual, except it looked exactly like mine. Same grayish silver color, same scuffed side panels. Even the rear bumper hung slightly off center, like mine did after a parking lot bump I never got fixed. I laughed to myself at first. What are the odds? I even slowed a bit to see if they'd pass. They didn't. I watched the car for a few miles. Every time I changed lanes, it followed. When I slowed down at the turnoff near an abandoned fruit stand, it slowed too. Something tightened in my chest. Coincidences happen, sure, but this felt ... studied. When I accelerated again, so did they, keeping a perfect two-car length distance. Eventually, I did what anyone would. I pulled off into a dusty rest area. There were no other cars. I parked, rolled down my window, and waited. The twin sedan didn't stop. It passed slowly, the driver's face barely visible in the fading light. But just as the front of their car aligned with mine, I caught a glimpse through the windshield. And I froze. It wasn't just someone who looked like me. It wasn't me, but it was close. Pale face, similar build, same shirt, but the expression completely blank, no blinking. Just this slow, continuous forward stare. I didn't breathe until the car had passed and disappeared down the road. I told myself I imagined it. Long day, not enough sleep. Maybe I was just projecting. I drank some water, started the engine again, and got back on the road. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a weather alert, heavy fog advisory ahead. Perfect. The road was straight for miles, but with the fog rolling in, visibility dropped fast. I kept checking the rear view. Nothing, empty road. But that was almost worse because I knew they hadn't turned off anywhere. And then, just as I rounded a shallow curve, I saw headlights behind me again, far off, but gaining. I took the next exit ramp and pulled into a dimly lit gas station. The fog had swallowed most of the background, but under the yellow-orange lights, I felt momentarily safe. I got out, stretched, and went inside to buy coffee. When I came back out, my breath caught. There was a gray sedan parked 2 pumps down, facing the opposite direction. Same model, same hanging bumper, engine running, no one inside. I stood there, coffee in hand, staring. I didn't approach. I didn't even move. Then the driver's door opened slowly, but not like someone was getting out. More like it had been opened from the outside and no one stepped in or out. It just remained open, creaking slightly in the wind. That's when I noticed something else. My car, the real one, had its headlights on. I hadn't left them that way. The doors were locked, the keys still in my pocket. I walked over carefully, unlocked it, and turned the lights off. Everything looked normal, except for the other car still idling in the background, its driver's seat empty, door ajar. I got in, locked the doors, and drove off without looking back. I didn't take the highway again. I took the smaller roads through back streets, staying under streetlights whenever possible. It was almost midnight when I made it home. I parked in my usual spot under the only working lamp in the lot and sat for a moment, listening, nothing. But just before I stepped out, I noticed the reflection in my side mirror. Headlights. Car approaching slowly from the far end of the lot. Same shape, same color. I didn't wait to see the driver. I'm writing this now from my bathroom floor with the door locked. I keep hearing tires outside. And just once, I thought. I heard my own voice call my name from the hallway. If anyone else has experienced something like this, ... please let me know. Am I going crazy? Story 20. The long tunnel. I was supposed to be home by midnight. That's what I told myself when I left the diner outside Asheville. But delays happen, wrong turns, gas station coffee, too many cigarettes on the side of the road. I crossed. State line somewhere after 2, my phone dead. The dashboard clock flickering between 3:04 and 3:05 a.m. I hadn't seen another vehicle in miles when I took the ramp onto the stretch of highway that cuts through the mountains. Then I saw the sign, tunnel 1.7 miles. I hate tunnels. I always have. Still, I took a breath and kept driving. The moment I entered, the air changed. Not just cooler, staler, thicker, like being swallowed. The tunnel was dimly lit by a series of overhead sodium lamps. Their glow flickered against the curved concrete walls, making it feel less like a road and more like a mouth. I glanced at my rearview mirror, and that's when I noticed the other car. It hadn't been there a second ago. At first, I figured I'd just missed it, but the way it drove didn't feel right. It didn't follow smoothly. It jerked side to side, changing lanes for no reason, hovering just far enough back that I couldn't make out the make or model. Its headlights weren't bright, but they had that bluish tint, almost cold. I watched it too long. When I looked back to the road ahead, I drifted toward the divider. I corrected and told myself to calm down. About a quarter of the way in, I realized it was matching my speed perfectly. I went faster. So did it. I tapped the brakes lightly, just enough that any normal driver would notice and back off. It didn't. It moved even closer. I couldn't see a driver. I told myself that maybe the windshield was just tinted. Or maybe it was the angle. Maybe. I flipped my rearview mirror up so I wouldn't see it anymore. It didn't help. I still felt it there. The tunnel curved slightly left, and I could hear the sound of its tires now grinding just behind mine. They didn't sync with mine either. It was a different rhythm. Faster, almost frantic. I rolled down my window to be sure. The tunnel air was colder than it should have been. Not fresh, more like the chill of a freezer. I didn't hear my own tires anymore, just theirs. Halfway through, without any warning, every single light went out. Total blackout. I slammed the brakes, but I didn't stop. The darkness was so complete, I couldn't see the wheel in front of me. The only thing I had was the sound of the road, and behind me, the sharper screech of tires growing closer. Not swerving anymore, gaining. My own heartbeat felt like it had moved into my ears. There was no light, not from my dashboard, not from the other car, but the sound never stopped. I reached for my phone out of habit. It was still dead. I tried the headlights again, the hazards, anything. Nothing responded. I couldn't even see the faint glow of the ignition panel. Just that sickening sound of rubber on concrete, both mine and the other. The worst part was the tunnel itself. I kept expecting to see a speck of daylight, an end to the darkness. But there was nothing. The road kept going. I tried to measure time, 30 seconds, a minute, 90 seconds. That noise stayed right behind me. And then, just once, I swear I heard it bump my rear bumper. Not hard, just enough to be felt. A nudge. I swerved instinctively and scraped the side wall. Sparks flashed tiny, useless stars, and I caught a glimpse of something in my side mirror. It wasn't a car, at least not like any car I've seen. Too low to the ground. No grille, no license plate. The lights, if they were lights, looked more like eyes. The mirror cracked and I lost it. I stopped steering. I just pressed the gas and prayed to reach the end. My fingers ached from gripping the wheel. My foot was nearly numb. The noise behind me slowed for a second, then surged. It wanted me to know it wasn't just following, it was choosing when. I don't remember exiting. There was no moment of transition, no flash of daylight or burst of air. I was just suddenly outside again. The sky was pale gray, like early dawn. My car had skidded halfway onto the shoulder. When I stopped and opened the door, my legs gave out. I threw up by the guardrail. There was no car behind me. Nothing came out of that tunnel. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. Nothing. Eventually, I drove away, trying not to look in the mirror. That was 3 nights ago. I haven't driven since, but I dream about it. The tunnel. The cold. The sound. And now, sometimes, in my apartment, I hear that same rhythm of tires on concrete. And I live on the 5th floor. If you've ever been followed in a tunnel, if you know that sound, please tell me I'm not alone. What did you see?